so much for for coming. It's great to see a full house here. My name is Jenny Martindale, and this is and we work with Wild Women Expeditions. We have a booth here, and it'd be great if you came by and visited us. I see a lot of familiar faces already, but we've met a lot of you already, so it's really great that you came by. Today, Kate and I are going to talk about 3 different trips that we really feel close to in our hearts, and we wanted to share them with you. And myself, I'm from Sudbury, Ontario, north of here, and I'd like to share 2 different canoe trips. I'm going to do 2 canoe trips, and Kate's going to do a kayak trip. And the 2 different canoe trips I'm going to, one is an introductory whitewater trip, and the other one is a flatwater trip in the Toboggan area. So I love promoting the trips in my own backyard, and I chose these trips because they were pretty accessible. They're introductory trips.
Hope you enjoy the Outdoor Adventure Show presented by Ontario Tourism. In the Ontario Adventures Theatre starting in 10 minutes. Special presentation by Debbie Day from the Planet D, Ontario's Bucket List.
I'm going to highlight a couple of canoe trips in the Sudbury area. And the first trip, I'm going to talk about canoeing the Middle French River. Has anyone here paddled the French River before? A few of you, awesome. And the route I'd like to, the French River, it flows between Lake Nipissing and Georgian Bay in Lake Huron. And it's about a 100-kilometer river. And the route I would like to share with you today is a middle portion of the route of the river. It's an introductory whitewater canoeing river, but it also could be paddled just as flat water because it's a drop and pool river, and so you can portage around all the rapids. But the rapids are the fun part, right? So the route I'm going to talk about is between Wolseley Bay and the Highway 69. It's 35 kilometers, so not a long trip, but it gives you a lot of time to stay and play at different rapids if you're interested in that, and just a nice leisurely trip. As I indicated, it is a great introductory whitewater trip, and just to note, I just like always saying, if you've never paddled whitewater before, it's always great to hire a guide or take a course first before you head out and do whitewater. Little plug, Wild Women is offering this trip this summer, and there's a lot of different guiding companies out there who offer this route, if you'd like to work with a guide on that. Again, it's a drop-in pool. Does everybody know what drop-in pool means? So it means you have a flat water stretch and then rapids. Flat water stretch and rapids. So you have flat water sections between the rapids, and then the rapids you can portage around. So you really don't have to run them if you don't want to, which makes it a nice option. It is, you have well-established campsites along the route. It's part of the French River Waterway Provincial Park. So permits are required on the French River, and you'll need to purchase permits before you do the route, but there's no designated campsite, so it's first come, first serve. And it's also part of the Canadian Heritage River System as well, so it's very rich in natural and cultural heritage. And you can look up a little bit more information on that online if you're interested in just finding out more about the history of the French River and the natural and cultural heritage of the river. And it's I have a little bit here as well. It is an excellent example of a glaciated Canadian Shield River environment. The shores are beautiful, rocky granite, windswept pines. It's so beautiful up there, and it's also it was a significant First Nations travel route dating back thousands of years. And because of this, when first Europeans came over, it became a very important voyager travel route as well. And so that was a major transportation route in Canada's development in the 1600s to the 1800s. So it's pretty cool. Just a little bit about the nature of the trip. Beginning in Wolseley Bay, you'll have about a half-day paddle of flat water, and then you'll start into a few sections of rapids. Here we have a picture of Rainy Rapids, and it looks pretty high here. This is the June water levels, and so the river is probably best paddled in June, early July, and then the water levels will go down towards mid-July into August. Depending on what you like, if you like those higher levels, then definitely June is a good time. The campsites are gorgeous. A lot of them are very rocky and some of them are beside rapids, other ones are beside really nice flat water sections, and very well established campsites. You really can't miss them, and they'll all be marked now because it is regulated by the provincial park system. So there's a lot of maintenance and cleanup along, and maintenance and monitoring along the river. So campsites are.
Does that freeze over in the winter time?
Pardon?
Does it freeze over in the winter time?
I can't hear you.
Does it freeze over in the winter time?
In sections. But probably the fast water sections, no guarantees, definitely. One of the best rapids along the route is called...
Starting in 5 minutes at the Ontario Adventures Theatre. Just inside the main entrance, Devin Dave from the Planet D, presenting Ontario's bucket list, 7 epic adventures you can do this summer. Presented by Dave and Deb from the Planet D. Don't miss it, starting in 5 minutes. Just inside the entrance, Ontario Adventures Theatre.
So this is a photo of what's called Blue Chute, and it's a favorite spot to run, and you can actually, a lot of people actually swim down this and try out just the feel for swimming in rapids. It's a lot of fun. And this is called Little Parisian Rapids, and the photo below just shows a picture of a tent at the bottom of the rapids, so you can camp here right beside the rapid and overlook the rapids and play in it and listen to the sound of the rapids at night when you're sleeping. And again, this is the last rapid you'll encounter. It's called Crooked Rapids, and below, this is sort of an example of what the lower part of the trip is. It's a nice flat water section. Probably about the second last day, you'll finish the rapids off if it's a 3 to 4 day trip, and then you'll have another half day of flat water paddling out to the highway in the end. So, just a bit more. I think I mentioned a few things. The route's approximately 35 kilometers, and you can put in Wolseley Bay at Wolseley Lodge or Lodge at Pine Cove, and then the takeout. We usually take out at French River Supply Post. And the supply post, they offer shuttles, because you'll need to do a shuttle up to Wolseley Bay, and you can leave your vehicle there, and then come up, take out, and you'll have your vehicle there at the bottom at the end. And then you can get park permits as well from the supply post. So moving right along, I'm going to just hop right into the next route. I'm going to highlight a route in the Chattahoochee canoe shipping area of Temagami. And this area is, the access is actually east of Sudbury, so you don't go up Highway 11 to the Temagami area, you would access it further south off Highway 17, just east of Sudbury on Kukagami Lake Road. And for this trip, we put in at what's called Matagamacy Lake and take out on Kukagami Lake. And it does require one shuttle to the put in at Matagamacy Lake, and then you would leave your vehicles at the takeout, and we usually use the Sportsman's Lodge on Kukagami Lake, and so your trip would end at Kukagami Lake at the Sportsman's Lodge. It just happens that both my trips I've highlighted are 35 kilometers, and there's only 4 portages in the whole trip. The first 3 are pretty short, and then you have a final one of about a kilometer in the end, and then if you're interested, the topo maps are at the bottom. So right when you put in a Matagamacy, you'll head up McCarthy Bay, and you'll have an opportunity to see pictographs in a narrow section of that bay. They're beautiful, and they're pretty visible still. And after a couple of portages to Gold and Colin Scott, we usually end up on Donald Lake, which is, I call it a great family destination because I've done a family canoe trip into there with my kids. And also it's a great place to spend a couple nights and just hang out. This is kind of an idea of what the water's like on Donald Lake. It's very clear, it's gorgeous, and you can bring your snorkel on that trip and have some fun. The scenery's beautiful. Again, the Wolf Lake, the Chiniguchi area is part of the Wolf Lake. If you've heard the Wolf Lake canoe tripping area, this is a little bit further east of that. And it's known for its red pine forest. There's a lot of mature, expansive red pine in this area. The portages are very well traveled. Some of them you might have to look around a bit for the takeout, but once you find them, they're all well traveled and easy to use. We love canoe tripping. I'm gonna hand it over to Kate. If you have any questions about any of these routes, we'd be happy to answer your questions at our booth afterwards, or here, because we can probably hang out for a bit. But Kate's gonna talk about her kayaking trip now on Georgian Bay.
Woo! Yay! Sea kayaking! So, I'm Kate. I learned how to canoe and kayak at the age of 35. So, I am going to share with you my favorite backcountry route, which was my first route, and you always remember your first, right? So we kayaked in a very large group of 13, plus or minus a few, and a few of you happen to be in the audience today. Thank you very much. We put in at Killarney, and we took out at Bing Inlet near Britt. So this is roughly a 50 nautical mile trip, roughly 90 kilometers. I did it 18 months ago, and I was astounded by how fun the names of the islands are in this neck of the woods. You've got the Chickens, which comes with the hen. You've got the Fingerboards, Dr. Oil Island, the Bustards. It's just an amazing look at Canadian history, or Ontario history specifically. So, I'm American. I've just applied for citizenship. Yay! And I got my guide to start studying for my test. And it's all about the prime ministers and the government and all the politics. Well, you know what? This route, at least from an Ontario perspective, is really all the education I needed for the cultural education, cultural heritage of Ontario. You've got the southern...
What part of the state are you from?
Ithaca, New York. Ithaca is gorgeous.
You know the weather here.
It's all the same.
The weather, same thing. Adirondack is a beautiful area.
Exactly. So you've got the southern edge of the Canadian Shield, as Jenny mentioned. You've got all that good granite bedrock exposed for the last 11,000 years. You've got your windswept eastern white pines that inspired the group of 7 painters, which maybe you guys as Canadians, growing up in the Canadian education system, are sick of hearing about. But as I go into the Art Gallery of Ontario in downtown Toronto, and I round the corner and see one of those paintings and see that I've walked past it or I've paddled past it, I do a little happy dance.
That picture on the right hand side there, that's on one of our on the Ontario quarter from here.
Nice, very nice. You also have the history of the French River Delta, which Jenny mentioned goes back to the voyageurs and being a key trading route for them. And of course, before the voyageurs, before the group of 7, you have a strong First Nations presence, and you cannot miss it when you are out paddling those waters.
That's your to island probably, near that area.
Yep.
Because I mean, it's here from that area, that's your island.
Absolutely.
There, and then the war would have been culture. There's one in there, the cookie from there, 15 and cookie, beautiful.
For sure. For sure. Thank you. So this is not exactly a beginner-friendly trip. It can be, but similar to the French River canoe trip, you really do need to have a certain set of skills before you go on your kayak trip. And so lucky for me, I was taking part of the Algonquin College in the Ottawa Valley ODAN program, the naturalist program, and they are just down the road here next to Wilderness Tours. And they were helping me with all the sea kayak skills that I needed, self-rescue, rolling, and all of that good stuff. And also the navigation skills, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the next slides. Your camping on this route is a mix of crown land. You will, as you get into the French River Delta, hit provincial parks, so you do need to be a little careful about permitting, and especially if you're American and you're on crown land, just be a little careful about that. The Thunder Bay Coast Guard is easily accessible by sat phone or the VHF radio, which is where you get your weather as well. And then 50 nautical miles later, you end up at a great ice cream spot, which was not open at the end of September, in Bing Inlet, Britain. So I was not a big water sport person growing up. My folks are from the Bronx. Yeah, I grew up in Ithaca, New York, but I learned a lot of my outdoorsy skills in the last 2 years, really. So you want to make sure you're really comfortable with reading your charts, you know how to use your GPS, you know how to use your compass, you file a float plan with the Coast Guard, and you understand how weather works. So yeah, you can check your weather on the VHF radio first thing in the morning or the night before, but you need to know what the clouds are doing, which way the wind's blowing, and understand if weather is going to change unexpectedly while you're out on the water, and make provisions for that. So that's, for me, navigation and weather are kind of the big reasons why this wouldn't be a beginner-friendly trip, and you would want to make sure that you either get your sea kayak skills through Paddle Canada or Orca, or you get a guided trip. So there are a couple of things. I've done canoe tripping and I have done sea kayak trips now. There are a couple of things that made me laugh when I thought about packing for this sea kayak trip that was so different from packing a food barrel for a canoe trip. Yeah, all right, fine. On the left, you're buying all the same amount of food at the grocery store, but you really don't have a lot of space in a sea kayak. Or you do, but you have to be a little creative about it. So I ended up burning and dehydrating, or dehydrating and burning maybe, some chicken, packed it all by day, and along with my belongings, my gearbox exploded, and then get it all into dry bags. You have to be creative about what you can get into the hatches. So I went the entire trip with my sleeping bag tucked between my legs. It worked.
Since you've been to Chocolate and you see a lot of, the whole time you see a lot of colorful trees around there, beautiful trees.
Very true, very true. And this particular trip was at the end of September, and we had amazing weather. So we did the 50 nautical miles, or 90 kilometers. We had 9 days to do it. We probably could have done it in 7. But at the end of September, you just don't know. We could have been wind blown in for a day. So you really do need to make sure you leave yourself enough time to do this trip. So that was my first experience with a 9-day backcountry paddling trip. And I wanted to just leave you with a few resources, because we are getting short on time, and I want to leave you with enough time to ask us questions. So yes, Wild Women Expeditions runs the French River trip. We also run a Killarney to Bing Inlet sea kayaking trip, but there are also many great resources in the area. You've got French River Adventures on the French River side, Ontario's Sea Kayak Centre, which is a wonderful partner of Wild Women Expeditions, White Squall, same thing, and Killarney Outfitters. So at this point, we'd love to say thank you, and we'll take any questions you might have.